CARCAST Podcast. It's a podcast where we talk cars. Today I'm here with Jake Douglas. We both go to Rhode Island College, and we're going to talk about cars. So today's agenda consists of stories about cars and mechanics. Tell us about your story of any sort of mishap you've had, any sort of interesting story that occurred. So we're going to start off by going to Jake. Jake, how are you doing today?
Oh, good. It's a Friday. I don't have to worry about classes and all that other good stuff. It was relatively sunny, so, I took out my car for a little drive and just chilled, What about you?
It's been a swell day for me. Went to work, steady day at Eggs Up Family Restaurant in Mendon Road in Cumberland, Rhode Island. Not too cold outside. Rolled down the windows and enjoyed my drive in my Honda Civic.
Nice.
Speaking of Honda Civics, let me tell you the story of how I got it. So I drove a 2009 Chrysler PT Cruiser. That was my first car. Everyone knows the PT Cruiser. Chrysler made them from 2001 to 2010, right at the start of the retro design trend. And shall we say, the design did not age well.
No, it did not.
So mine was a 2009, a late model Chrysler. They made some changes and refinements, but they never got it right. So I bought my first car for $3,600 at a gas station in Rentham, Massachusetts. The car had 89,000 miles. It was crystal blue. Here's an image right here. It's a beautiful looking car. And it was just such a quirky little car. It had the hubcaps and it was just quirky. And I loved it. I fell in love with it. Now, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Isn't that right, Jake?
Oh, 100%.
I had no idea about cars back in October of 2017. I had no idea what I knew now. If I knew what I knew now, I would have not walked, but ran away from that car. So I bought the car. It was great in the beginning. To be honest, obviously Chrysler is not known for their quality. There's no arguing that. But the car was okay. It was okay for a first car.
Yeah.
A point A to point B car. I wasn't fast. I never drive very, very, very fast. But the car had an automatic transmission, and I was sat upright, and the transmission lever was way down here. It was like on the floor. And it was a slow car, but it was a big hatchback. I took really good care of my car. But in my time owning it, I had to get a head gasket job on my car, which is like a $300 job, labor and parts. If you were to do a head gasket yourself, it would be a lot cheaper, just so you know. That's why you got to do your own head gasket job. It's not too complicated. It's just a rubber piece you have to put on your thing in your car. Anyways, the car burnt oil. One time I was driving my car to my girlfriend's house, and I parked it. I backed it up and parked it where I was. And she said, it was at nighttime. And she said, "Your car is smoking." And I looked at my windshield, and I looked right where the dashboard meets the windshield. And on the outside of my car, I could see like the thinnest, almost like a thin vape fog that was emitting out of my engine. And I got nervous. I popped the hood, and I can see that it was no fire, no flames, just some smoldering happening. I had no idea what was going on. And I ended up, my girlfriend's neighbor happened to be mechanically inclined, and he was able to clean it up. And he told me my head gas is probably blown and that my head gasket is leaking oil onto the exhaust manifold, which is just behind the engine, and it's smoldering. Now, to be honest, that's not a big deal. Essentially, you're just leaking oil. It's nothing detrimental to your vehicle, but I didn't know anything. So I had to get it fixed. I should have saved the money and just sold the car.
Yeah, really.
Sold the car.
Oh man, that thing's an upside down bathtub basically with wheels.
Yep, it didn't handle good. It didn't drive fast, and it was definitely quirky. But that's one story I have, as well as many others. I hit a curb at one point trying to drift, but we'll talk about that at a different time. That was my first car. Jake, what was your first car?
Actually, ironically, my first car was the one we talked about last week. It's the Cadillac DeVille. And again, I had, barely any money in my savings account. And I was like, what can I get that's cheap and reliable? Well, again, Hondas are cheap and reliable, but for a college student, like a freshman at, a couple years ago, almost 3 now, for me, $4,000 is a little too steep. So, $2,000, something in the higher mileage range. Again, I looked at like Honda Accords. I looked at, the hatchbacks, the Golf GEs. Those things are
Yeah.
fun. And I guess the Cadillac just kind of spoke to me. And obviously, I, don't regret that decision because I get a couch on wheels. We have a caller with us. Please introduce yourself to the podcast. Casey, hear us?
Yeah, I didn't know if you were talking about me.
Yeah, no,
Sorry,
we were talking about you. Sorry. Do you have any first car stories or anything similar to that?
Well, I love the Cadillac story. My first car was a Cadillac Sierra '99. I drove it once, never drove it again. Um, I needed an oil change, so I drove it to my uncle's house, and I never saw the car again. I don't even know if I ever got the oil change. And
Wow.
then this most recent car I had was actually a 1996 Cadillac Seville, my favorite car ever of all time, and then it blew up on me.
Oh man. Yeah, they have a lot of problems. And the issue is like if you're a college kid and you see, oh, look at this like old antique, almost but not quite antique plate worthy vehicle, and you see a price tag that's like under $2,000, you're gonna jump at that, but then you realize, oh, I'm gonna have to put a lot of time and money into it. And people will tell me, oh, why do you drive around that money pit? And it's like, well, you know what? Your car, how many hours do you spend in your car commuting to your job or commuting to, school? You want to kind of enjoy that ride. And, I'm happy with it. And I think that's all that matters is if someone's proud of their car and they're happy with it, just like Savion, he was happy that he had that PT Cruiser, then that's all that matters.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I didn't actually have to put a lot of money into my Cadillac, but I took care of it. I love the thing. It's my baby. I was actually, my first day on a job, I was working as a dishwasher at a new restaurant. A line cook comes back in from a cigarette break and says, "Hey, your car's on fire outside."
Wow.
I said, "What?" Like, I was in the car, I was doing dishes on my first day at a new job. And then I was just like, oh, what happened? I really, to this day, like, do not know what happened. I'm very confused by it.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Was it coming from the hood or from the rear of the vehicle?
Honestly, to be completely honest with you, I don't know because I didn't see it on fire. I really don't know. All I know is that the line cook went back out with the fire extinguisher and then came back in like not even a minute later and it was fine. So I don't think it was like a really big thing. And then when I went out to go look at my car, this is where I thought something was fishy and I thought maybe someone was trying to like mess with me or something. Because
Yeah.
you can only open my fuel door from the inside of the car. You have to press a button and it pops open the fuel door. My fuel door was wide open and my gas cap was missing. And I said,
Oh my God.
That's sketchy.
but like a lot of people told me that I had the same exact car as another like well-known drug dealer. So I'm pretty sure someone
Well,
just
there you go.
Yeah, I mean that just goes to show that the DeVille and the Seville have that reputation.
I didn't even know those cars existed until you guys. DeVille and the we're talking about the 101 Dalmatians, that character with the what was her name?
Cruella.
Corella DeVille. Yeah.
I used to get made fun of so much because I had the half black, half white hair like Cruella DeVille, but I drove a Seville, so everybody was like, "Casey, what the fuck are you doing wrong here?"
Oh,
Wow, what a great story. Casey from Rhode Island College. Thank you so much for that story. Do you have anything else you'd like to tell us? Any cool, crazy mechanic story? Any mishap in the mechanic shop with any of your cars?
I mean, I don't really have a lot of shop stories. I'm not in the shop a lot when the guys are actually working on the cars, more when they're just fucking around. But I do have an somewhat interesting story. Did you know that, I mean, you guys probably know, you guys are car people, but anything older than a 1981 you can't insure unless you already have a vehicle? My first car that I was going to insure for myself was a 1972 Dodge Star. It was lavender purple with a white ring.
oh,
Jeez.
So sexy, so beautiful. But because it was a 72, I couldn't insure it under myself unless I already had another vehicle. So I thought that was like stupid because I really wanted this car. I got it for a great price. I only paid $1,500 for the car. and it
Mhm.
was beautiful. Obviously antique, but like it was beautiful. I wasn't even gonna put an antique plate on it. It was just a normal plate. I was gonna drive it around, daily driver, and they said no, too old for you.
Wow.
Yeah, unless the car was a collector's item, you got to be careful. As the car ages, all the rubber just deteriorates with time. In the engine, there's a lot of rubber. Back in those days, it was less. There's a lot more rubber under the hood nowadays, rubber and plastic. But I would be wary driving. My dad's got a 1977 Datsun 280Z in the garage, and that's his baby. He bought it back in the day, and he's trying to restore it. It's been restored, but it doesn't run quite right. But 72, that's pretty old. But if you like it and you love it, and unfortunately, you can't have it. But it'd be nice if you could. That's an interesting story.
I thought it was definitely an interesting story.
Are you guys familiar with Mineral Spring Avenue?
You mean miserable Spring Avenue?
Yeah, I know the traffic there is awful, but there's this hair salon. I can't remember the name of it, but I was driving one by, a couple months ago. There's this hair salon or whatever, and I see like this really sleek black car. It looked like it was from like the late 60s, early 70s, right? I just drove by it, didn't think about it. And then, a couple months go by and I still see it there. And I'm driving and I'm like, every ounce of me is telling me go pull over and check out the car, but then I would be like, I'm gonna have to invest in this car. You know what I mean? I want to check out what it is. To me, every time I drove by it, I'd be like, it looks like a Lincoln Continental, and those things are beautiful. And the turning radius is worse than my Cadillac, for the matter. And again, it's just that's a beautiful car, but a couple of days ago, I was like, you know what? Finally, I'm gonna go check it out. It's been here for pretty much all of winter. Let's see what is this car story? Well, why has it been sitting by this hair salon for so many weeks and months? I find out it's a '77 Ford Thunderbird, and the owner of the car comes out immediately. And he was like, "You like?" I was like, "Yeah, it's a nice car, but what's wrong with it?" He's like, "Nothing wrong with it. Just the gas gauge or whatever, goes up and down sometimes when you hit a bump." I was like, "There's no way that that's the only thing wrong with it." I was like, "Okay, well, how much do you want for it?" He's like, "I know the price of these things. These T-Birds, they're like worth 5-6K, but I'm selling it for 4." I'm like, "Wow, 4? That's not terrible." Needless to say, I look it over, I look underneath, I see a lot of rust. And again, I knew that it's been sitting out in the winter for a couple months. So it would be one thing if it was like garage or he was driving it back and forth. But I know since it was sitting out there, it's like, if I buy that for 4,000, it's probably going to be another like 4 to 5,000 investment, even though it is a beautiful, car. And it's like, you got that power that's similar to a Mustang, but still reserved enough and comfortable enough to drive where it's still like that personal luxury car that they were trying to market back in the day.
Yeah, and they revived the Firebird. Firebird? No, which one?
Thunderbird.
Thunderbird. They revived the Thunderbird in I think the early 2000s again, but it quickly became a grandpa and grandma car because the ones that the clientele were the people who yearned for the days where the Thunderbird would come back, and in today's day they're all old, so that was discontinued.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great story. Be careful you don't want to get a junker, and then as a college student, that's not what we want, right, Casey?
Yeah, I was sold a lemon one, so I definitely understand that. Don't want a junker as a college student.
No, you do not. No, you do not. My first car was a junker, but I had it from 89,000 miles to 107,000 miles, and it was okay for a first car. I eventually sold it to a man who was a friend of my grandpa's for 2,500, and he drove it until unfortunately he passed away from COVID. And now his grandson is driving it. But it's pretty cool because that is a car for either a grandma or a grandson or granddaughter, depending on what you like. It's either an really old person driving it or a young kid like me who doesn't know the real story of the PT Cruiser. And then the old ones who just a few who really like the design. I like the design. I thought it was quirky. I'm much happier with my 2016 Honda Civic though. Beautiful. It's I think it's a much better designed car, much more handsome. It's got sharper lines, and I've made a few upgrades to it. Nothing crazy, because obviously I'm a college student on a budget, but because I have the Honda Civic sedan, I'm leaning more towards luxury. If I would have gotten the hatchback or the coupe, I would have wanted to black out my chrome, get some exhaust upgrades. But because it's a sedan, it's more laid back, and obviously it doesn't, drive like a Rolls Royce by any stretch of the imagination. But I put some chrome door handles on it. I upgraded the headlights from their OEM headlights to an aftermarket headlight that you find on the Type R of the Honda Civic, and the top end of trim, the touring level of the Honda Civic, with sequential turn signals. It cost me a pretty penny, but I installed them myself, and I think it looks excellent. My next thing I'd like to put on the car is I would love to get leather seat covers. And I think and then rims eventually, but rims are extremely expensive for what I want. It's like $400 for cheap rims, and they can go up to $1,000 if you want to put more money on it. And I just want to I have 16-inch steelies on right now, and I would like to upgrade to 16-inch alloy rims. The reason why I'm not going to a 17-inch diameter rim is because my car was not designed for a 17-inch steel rim, for a 17-inch rim. Yeah, 16-inch to 17 inch is just an inch, but the car is going to ride obviously a little rougher because it's a bigger rim. A lot of the cushion and suspension is supported by the rubber. So those low profile tires, yeah, they handle great, but they ride rough. So because I'm going with this luxury philosophy, I want my car to ride smoother. And with that, I'm not going to get bigger rims, but I do want rims. They're just very expensive.
Yeah, no, like you said, they're expensive, and like you have to choose them very selectively, because if you get the wrong color or the wrong size, it just makes your car look like a Matchbox or Hot Wheels,
Yeah, rims are like the shoes of your vehicle. You got to have the right shoe for the right car.
Yeah, the right kicks.
If I put rims from an older Honda Civic, like a 2015 or 14 model year, it's going to look like a new Civic with old rims. Yeah, there's still steep alloy rims, but all these car rims are getting the rim wars. Rims are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's just crazy. My dad's Datsun has 14-inch rims. And, that's going back like 30, 40 years. But, back in the early 2000s, most cars had 15, 14-inch rims. Nowadays, the standard for the lowest end model is like a 16 or 17. They're just getting bigger and bigger. There's some SUVs out there that got 21, 22-inch rims, which is huge. Yeah. That's huge. And it's an SUV. You don't want it. SUVs are not meant to be handled with these big rims and low profile tires. They're meant to have cushion, comfort, people movers. So I don't know why they're getting thinner and thinner, these SUV wheels. It's ridiculous. One time in Providence, I saw a truck, a Chevy Silverado 2017 model. I kid you not. It had aftermarket wheels because the wheels were a lot larger. The rims must have been 25-inch rims. The wheel itself was about, from when I was driving by, it was no joke, like this thick. It was one of those really, really thin wheels, and it just looked like a truck with one of those old 1818 carts and wheels, or whatever that year came out. It looked like a carriage. It was ridiculous. I guess beauty is in the eye of the beholder, I suppose.
Do you have any idea if that car was like on, 3-inch lift kit, 4-inch lift kit, or?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
This truck has been modified to fit. In order for the wheel to turn properly, it had to be raised. I mean, the wheel wasn't outside of the wheel wells, but it was just a huge wheel. It was definitely a larger wheel than stock. And it's a truck. What are you doing? That's the way I look at it.
I know. You think about it, like an average truck price is what, $45,000? If you want it like super loaded and stuff like that, right? Somewhere around there, like 35, 40K. And
yeah,
you know how much a Corvette is? A Corvette low as 25 to 30. You know what I mean? Like, do you want a truck and then you want to like make it like look like Goliath, or do you want a Corvette? You know?
Yeah. Casey, what would you get if you could have yourself a little sports car?
I don't honestly know. I've never really thought about sports cars. I've always ever thought about muscle cars.
All right, muscle car.
Muscle's
Let's
the
hear
way
it.
to go. Yeah.
1970 Dodge Charger.
Dodge Charger.
Those are beautiful. Yeah.
Like
The other-
Challengers too, but I always like the Charger.
The other day, I was in Providence at a car show, a car meet by 401 Street Life, and yeah, 401 Street Life. You guys can check out their page, and it's quite interesting what they have going on down there. Huge car shows in Warwick. It's hosted by Kyle McLaughlin. He's a great guy. I got to meet him in person, and this guy owns a 1977 Chevy Camaro with some fat wheels on the back. Here's some pictures. I mean, look at this vehicle. It's nuts. And believe me when I say it's loud. I was able to film some footage, and it was quite an experience.
It's now
Yeah, it's a muscle car.
I love the CRV.
I'm sorry, repeat that, Casey?
His Camaro is now his daily driver because his CRV's motor blew up.
Oh.
Oh no, I wasn't aware he had a CRV, but obviously that's not what he's trying to show off.
No, his CRV is like his daily because he has the Camaro and I want to say 3 or 4 other cars, but the Camaro is his favorite.
Yeah, this isn't really a car mechanic story, but this story I'm about to tell is about a motor, so to speak. I was flying. So we this little meet I had with Kyle and a few of his other co-evils was underneath the bridge in Providence. Just under the bridge. It's an interesting spot, but the acoustics are crazy because it's under the bridge. Everything is twice as loud as it should be. And I should have brought earplugs. So I was flying my drone. Okay. I own a Phantom 4 drone, and I was flying it, and I should have known. I have to calibrate my compass. The drone was having some trouble flying. It was a little windy and very dark, and the sensors weren't working because it was really dark. You're not really supposed to fly this particular type of drone at night. It's a cinematic drone. It needs to have plenty of light. The aperture needs to be correct. Otherwise, the footage gets too grainy. But I digress. Anyways, I flew the drone into a wall.
Wow.
And you know those videos of car crashes when you hear everyone go, ooh, when the car crashes?
Yeah, the
Some people were
YouTube
watching,
reaction.
and my drone crashed into a sort of the side wall. It must have been literally 3 inches off the ground because I was trying to land it, but the wind took it, and I didn't know if I was facing forward or backwards. So at the time, I didn't know if left would turn it more left into the wall or if it would turn it away. I couldn't tell. So the drone crashed. The drone survived. Don't worry, everyone. The drone is fine, I think. I haven't flown it since, but one of the propellers was broken, the little plastic propeller. I replaced it immediately, and I mounted it onto the rotating motor, and the motor survived. I haven't flown my drone. I'm praying to God that my drone flies straight now and it's not a little wacky. But that was a $1,700 investment that would have sucked if it would have broken.
Yeah, no, that's awful. I mean, I would sue Phantom for false advertising. It doesn't Phantom through the wall like Danny Phantom or anything.
I know, right? They should have the Rolls-Royce Phantom be able to do that too. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
I'm going to pay $500,000 for a car, that thing better be able to teleport. But what's the most, all right, let's just say you guys have established yourselves, you have successful jobs. What would be your maximum you would pay for, say, a sedan, if that's your choice? I mean, you can get a sports car, but let's talk about a sedan. Like for me personally, let me start you guys off. My dream car, realistically, believe it or not, is a Honda Accord. the 2018, 2020 model year. The 2021 Honda Accord, it was a very minor facelift, but I like the 2018 to 2020. 2021's a bit more modern, a bit too different for me. Anyways, that car souped up is about $40,000 for a Honda. The Type R starts at 37, and that's a honest to God race car. So that would be the most I would probably spend on a sedan, would be about $40,000. What about you, Jake? What would you spend if you can get a sedan or some sort of coupe or something?
Well, I mean, on the topic of like dream cars, she was talking about muscle. Like, I do love muscle cars, but also there's some. I have a weakness for Mazda. Mazda has some interesting lineups for fast cars. Now, like right away, if you said, okay, you have to choose right now what you want, I would say the 77 Chevrolet Chevelle. Those things are nice. It's kind of like the Impala, but a little bit sportier. And still like a diet Camaro, I guess you would call it. So those are nice, and like I like the body and the shape. But however, I do really like the Mazda Miata because that thing's literally a toy. Like a grown man could probably pick up the car. You know what I mean? That's how light it is, but it's super fun because it's so small, and you could whip around and you could LS swap it. So you could put a Corvette engine into this tiny car and like whip around and have like a lot of fun with it. So that would probably be my like dream project car, to like work on an old Miata, like from the 80s or something like that, and like, mod it or something. But like as far as like dream car, or like you said, sedan, that would be probably the Chevelle.
Yeah, the new Mazda Miatas, they're about 2,200 pounds, I believe. They're quite light, and having a 2-liter engine, rotary engine, it has a manual transmission. 181 horsepower in a car that light is fast. Yeah, especially if you know how to drive a standard transmission. Yeah. And Casey, you mentioned you wanted to have an older vehicle. I noticed you guys don't speak modern language. I'm just curious about that. What's your reasons for that?
I mean, when you're like driving on the highway, everybody kind of has the same car. You know what I mean? Like older cars have like a flavor to it, and like it gives off a different vibe. And that's why I chose my Cadillac over Honda Civic. It's like, yeah, you see plenty of people. It gets you from point A to point B. It saves you gas money. It saves you mileage and all that other stuff. But like, there's a little bit more personality to the car that I have, even though it's like, oh, it's either a grandpa car or a drug dealer car. You know what I mean? But like, there's a comfortable in between you can find, and it's just, I don't know. It's reminiscent of what America used to be for the car industry, which it was at the top.
You can't beat the sound of a V8 American V8 engine. The harmonics, you just can't. What do you think about the old V8 engines, Casey?
I mean, I totally agree. My Caddy was a V8 all day, every day. V8 for the fucking win. Yeah. But and then to answer your question, I don't think I'd spend more than $20K on a car, just because all the cars I've ever wanted, I have found for either $20,000 or less.
Nice.
The last thing I wanted to say, I always choose 90s cars just because anybody I've seen or the cars that I've had, it seems like anything from the 90s breaks down less or has less problems with them versus anything newer. Like newer cars just seem to have things that break more often, or features that aren't made as well as they should have been or were in the past, because they want you to keep reinvesting in your car and keep spending money and keep trading up.
Planned obsolescence. Unfortunately, it's a very real thing. Yeah. But Casey, we are going to wrap up our podcast. So we appreciate you coming by. Casey, you have a good one, and we hope to hear from you soon. Wow, some stories can go a long way. We all got lots of stories about our cars. With that in mind, a lot of stories can come from a car. We all know that. A lot of things can happen. A lot of things can go wrong. A lot of things can go great. This concludes this episode of CARCAST Podcast. Tune in next week, where the topic of conversation will be, what is the worst thing you've done to your car? We hope to see more people soon. Peace out.
See you, everybody.